So in my recent top 100 films of all time video, I included Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. It's my favourite Hitchcock movie and one that has been remade twice. Once in 1998 with Rear Window and once in 2007 with Disturbia. One of which has a recently paralysed Christopher Reeves given an intimate performance which incorporates his own tragedy into his character's life whilst being directed by one of the most decorated theatre directors of all time. And the other one is good. I mentioned in the same top 100 film video that I liked Disturbia quite a lot and I had been thinking about it, so I decided to watch it, and it honestly holds up so well, and I think it's easily not just the best Rear Window remake, but the best Hitchcock remake period, of which there are a fair many. And we live in a world now where remakes and sequels run the industry, or at least the box office, but not many of them are great. In fact, not many of them are even good, namely the Disney live action remakes. But I think this movie handles being a remake exceptionally well and ends up being one of the best of all time. For one, it's doing the best thing a remake can do, which is distance itself from the original in a way that takes the general story elements and adds them to a new context, like time-wise or location-wise, with different characters and relationships. Carbon copy remakes of classic works are pretty much devoid of anything special because they offer nothing that the original doesn't do better. But this film isn't that. Just take the title for example. They don't even reuse the same title. There's probably a lot of people who don't even know this is a remake, and the new title describes this interpretation perfectly. Disturbia. This is a story about a disturbed or disturbing suburbia, which is a completely different setting to the original also. And much like other great remakes like Evil Dead from 2013, the film starts in a completely new way. See, the original Rear Window pretty much opens with our protagonist LB already in his crippled state. We get straight into his situation, no real questions asked. But in Disturbia, we open with a fishing trip, which ends with our main character Kale getting into a car accident with his father where his dad sadly dies. Now there's actually a decent bit to this opening. For one, it establishes our character as a genuinely good guy. He's choosing to spend his time with his dad when he could be with his friends. And also in like 2 minutes we have the context that these two characters have a great relationship. Their chemistry on screen is brilliant because say what you will about Shia LaBeouf in real life, he is definitely not the most likable character to say the least, but the man can act and always could. So he gives a good performance here. Then this accident happens and fans of the original film may think this is where he gets injured since we know LB was injured in some sort of car accident, but they subvert that expectation and continue on with the story. So it serves to set up our character's personality, his relationships, set up the movie plot-wise, and then also it's giving a little fun expectation subversion to the fans of the original, whilst not excluding people who haven't seen it. So then Kel goes to school and whatnot, he's sleeping in class, he's clearly still in his grieving process, and this teacher is literally being the biggest asshole ever. This is one of my main issues with the movie. You know, clearly he's a good kid, and this death has hit him hard, and yet despite this, literally everyone, including his mother, is being so hard on him for no reason. And I take away from this that this is the consequences of being a kid. You know, nobody believes you, and they think you're constantly rebelling against something, everything is your fault, which I suppose works. It's one of the more interesting ideas that this brought to the table that the original doesn't, because LB is a respected adult photographer, so his word means a whole lot more than a teenage boy on house arrest with the police already having it out for him. But then this is the whole modernization of it too. So he's on house arrest, which is a fun new twist to add to it because LB can't leave his house because of a wheelchair. But Kale can't leave the house because the police show up, which you can already tell from the beginning is going to be used to his advantage at one point, but it also allows our character to show more, to move more, to engage with the story more. Now I get the point of Rear Window is that LB is pretty much a stationary viewer, like the audience, unable to interact with what they're seeing, but what they did here is different, and again, different is better when it comes to remakes. Then what's funny is, in the original, LB leans on neighbor spying because there's nothing else to do, but you can't do that in a modern context, so Kale does what any teenage boy would do home alone for 3 months. No, not that. He plays Xbox and watches TV. It's only after his mother takes those things away does he resort to spying, because then there is literally nothing else to do. You know, it's like they're unloading the gun, they're removing the ammunition, because if he had just started off spying and that's all he ever did, people would be like, well, that's not what a teenage boy would do right now. They would be playing video games or watching TV. So they give you that and then take it away so you can't use it against them. It's so clever. And then we get the love interest. So both films have a love interest, but the difference is Lisa in Rear Window is a pre-established girlfriend. They have a relationship already, so when she comes into the picture, they don't waste time on the will they, won't they. But Disturbia builds a romance from the ground up, which is actually quite difficult to do in a horror, thriller, mystery type of film, because it's expecting a lot for a film to handle the themes of grief, the themes of boredom and solitude, the killer mystery, the legal complications, and also a romance on top of that. And not just a romance, but a new romance, a budding one, a building one without foundations. But they handle it all very well and use each theme to dance with the others. Plus, it's a 2000s movie. They have to have a will they, won't they when you know they will. It's the nature of it and part of that decade's charm. But the point of both movies is that there's a neighbor that the protagonist believes is a killer, which again both films handled in different ways. In Rear Window, it's the killing of a single person, the wife. And also technically a dog later, but mainly the wife. Whereas in Disturbia, Mr. Turner is believed to be a serial killer, very much upping the ante. But the thing that Rear Window does outclass Disturbia with is that, spoilers here by the way if you weren't aware, is that Lars Thorwald is a much less obvious killer. For everything LB says and does, there is a rational explanation. It keeps the audience intrigued about whether he actually is a killer or not. It casts doubt on the entire thing, but Disturbia fails to do it quite as well. You do get the undoubted feeling Mr. Turner is a killer. You are just waiting for it to be revealed. They throw a red herring at you every now and then, but they're overshadowed by the blatant, terrifying nature of the neighbor. Because in Rear Window, we only ever see Thorwald from afar. It's only until the ending where the jig is up do we actually meet him. But in Disturbia, the audience become very much acquainted with Mr. Turner, which gives the audience a bigger bias against him because they're intentionally making him creepy. But once the reveal happens, the film jumps worlds apart again because of course in Rear Window, Thorwald has killed just his wife. He's not known or established as a competent or even habitual killer, but Hitchcock leans really into his suspense mastery to make what is essentially one man walking to another man's apartment the most terrifying situation. But in Disturbia, we go full horror. I mean, cadavers stuck in the walls, cops getting their necks snapped like a Mortal Kombat character.
Or I'll walk out of this arena!
Finish him! Fatality.
This shit gets insane so quickly, but it doesn't feel jarring or out of place. It's actually done really well, and it feels just as intense as Rear Window due to the elevated stakes. But you know, of course Disturbia isn't as great as Rear Window. It's far less nuanced, it does away with the claustrophobia aspect a lot, it's less clever, less great performances, it uses the worst trope in modern filmmaking, which is the idea of enhancing an image. The cops are particularly dumb, like when a kid is telling you that a man is killing people, you should probably investigate a bit further since those are some serious accusations. But in general, I think the movie is just a great time and a perfect example of modernizing a film concept whilst keeping everything that makes the original special. Plus, this just has stuff the original doesn't, which makes it a perfectly worthwhile film on its own. They changed the location, the time, the ages of the characters, the group of friends, the stakes, the killer, the backstory, and having an Xbox 360 in your movie instantly bumps it up a few points. And this film is so 2000s, which is one of my favourite eras for films ever, and he makes use of the technology that was available, like cameras and cell phones, and it is full of 2000s filmmaking aesthetics, and it's incredibly horny like all films were back then. Plus, this was made at a time where you could have Viola Davis, now Academy Award winner Viola Davis, as a side character with like 2 minutes of screen time and 12 lines of dialogue. And they even explore similar and more cheesy moments, like implying Mr. Turner left the house as the redhead from the club to throw off the scent, which of course in Rear Window, there's this whole bit about people seeing Mrs. Thorwald leave the apartment, but whether it was her or not is constantly in doubt. It's a throwaway here, of course, but it's a huge deal in the original. Also, they make use of subtle moments like informing the audience there's girls going missing during a joke, which means you can almost miss that information, which sounds bad, but it's actually quite neat. It becomes a sort of Easter egg or minor detail that if you blink you could miss it. It's a completely worthy time and a fun example of doing PG-13 horror exceptionally well. It shows that PG-13 horror can actually be scary and intense, can really be driven by the suspense and can push the boundaries of what horror can be. So that's why I think it's one of the best remakes ever made. Not because it's one of the best films ever made, but because it handles every aspect of being a remake expertly. But that's just me. Have you seen Disturbia or even Rear Window? If so, let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about this video. I read every single comment and reply to as many as possible, and whether it's one of the greatest remakes of all time or not. As always, keep watching movies.